What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about what's going on with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down what's happening with the economic calendar thus far. When is Jerome Powell going to be talking again? And how this could affect the markets. And what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I break things down, all this information, before I get into any more details and talk about how the market may move going into tomorrow, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening to the market. Looking at SPY, we're kind of red in the after hours as we ended up seeing some selling pressure getting back to the markets as we predicted so far. But the question is, how on earth is this going to continue going into Monday? And we have something very important going on. So Jerome Powell is going to appear on that show called 60 Minutes. It's on CBS, and this is going to be very, very important. Now, he's going to be talking about the Fed's policy changes. He's going to be talking about inflationary numbers and how the state of the economy is looking. But what Jerome Powell says could be a little bit capricious here and there because we'll see if he says anything about the rate hikes, any cuts in March, or if he says that the Fed's not going to cut in March or anything like that. Well, I just have to wait and see. But you want to be very careful when he speaks. This tends to move the market a lot. We're likely going to see a big reaction to what he says going into Monday. And I'll just have to wait and see. I can't really predict everything, but I can tell you about what technicals suggest will end up happening. Now, if Jerome Powell tries to kind of trivialize different situations out there and he makes it seem as though everything is fine, it could still be decent for the markets. If the guy ends up saying something very similar to what he said on Wednesday, right? He could cause the market to see more downside. So you want to be very careful. Now, he has a track record, at least for the past couple of days, for causing some temporary downside, which ended up getting bought back up by the markets. So it didn't really crash the markets, it just caused some temporary downside. I don't think it's going to be much of a difference on this next discussion because Powell does not want to cause like a massive, massive crash in just one day on the show. At least I don't really think that. I think that he's just going to say whatever's on his script. I think he's just going to try to be very careful with his words. So I'll be watching this carefully. We'll see what it causes, but I do want to break down how it could affect the charts in just a few minutes. I also want to remind you guys that tomorrow is going to be another very important day for data. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI. Then we have the ISM Services PMI coming out at 10 o'clock a.m. and a bunch of services data. Now, all of this is important for the services sector, which makes up a big part of our economy. But then also the ISM Services new orders is very important for inflationary numbers. So we'll see if this actually goes up or not. So this data is going to affect inflation, and this data is going to affect our economy and the views by the Fed. That's why it's very important. I think the ISM Services PMI and ISM Services new orders are the two most important pieces of data tomorrow. So watch for volatility at 10 o'clock a.m. The market may respond to this. Be very, very careful heading into tomorrow. Now, for earnings, we don't really have much coming out. For Monday, we just have Caterpillar, we have McDonald's, very, very minor stuff, nothing compared to what we saw last week. Then we have Palantir after the market closes. Later on during the week, we have Snap, which could be a very fun one to play, so watch that carefully. It's going to be for Tuesday. And then Wednesday is going to be the biggest day of the week as we have Alibaba in the morning. We have Uber and a couple of others. And then after the market closes, we have PayPal and Disney, two of the biggest earnings for the week. And that's pretty much it for the week. We have PepsiCo maybe on Friday, but everything else is quite minor. Nothing is that insane. So I'm going to be watching all of these very carefully. Not really expecting a whole lot. When it comes to the fear and greed index, this is still at greed right now. The market is still quite greedy, but things could change depending on external factors and pieces of data like the S&P global numbers. So we'll see if we get any shifts for now, but right now the market still favors greed and the bulls. Market is still at extreme greed in terms of market momentum, and the put and call positioning is still at extreme greed. This is once again favoring bulls temporarily, but this adds on to the risk. That's the most important thing. It adds on to the risk. So right now, the market's still getting bought up like crazy. That's why a lot of these indicators are at extreme greed. The VIX is at neutral right now because it was popping. Now it came back down after Jerome Powell's speech. That's why it's at neutral still. So it's kind of delayed. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the market favors the bulls overall in terms of the trend. But the issue is things are becoming more risky. Things are becoming risky at these highs for SPY, for the S&P 500, for the NASDAQ, the Dow. Things are becoming more risky as we're seeing indicators at these extremes, and you want to be very, very careful. Now, let's talk about the charts. How are things looking? it's quite obvious to me that SPY is going to retrace a little bit. There's a very good chance that's going to happen. So we have this nice rising wedge like pattern, but now we're going to be watching these key levels. So it, excuse me, this is very simple. So SPY, in my opinion, it's going to likely come down to at least 492. It's going to test this lower trend line. If we lose this, we also have this breakout area. So this breakout zone was between 491.5 and 492. If we lose 491.5, there's going to be a risk of us coming all the way back down to either 490 or 489, all the way down here if we lose this 491.5 area. And if you want to remain bullish, you want to see this thing either bounce off 492.5 or 491.5, somewhere in this range, bounce and then push back up above 495 to 496. Our next target is going to be all the way up to the higher 490s, right? All the way up here. So, what do I think is going to pan out? And here's my prediction. So, the last time Jerome Powell spoke, the market got a big rug pull. I'm sure you guys remember that on Wednesday. The market came down very hard. But Jerome Powell wasn't enough to cause the market to continue tanking as earnings came out quite decent, right, for Amazon and also for Meta. And that helped save the market alongside the buyers the next day. So it's a mix of both things. There's still buyers out there defending the markets, and also earnings were quite decent. And Jerome Powell wasn't enough to hold the market down. The market got bought back up. That suggests that the buyers are still present, and there's no sign of them. Excuse me. There's no sign of them losing their edge just yet. So I think there's a very good chance after Jerome Powell gives his little speech and has his interview on 60 Minutes, Powell is going to cause the market to drop a little bit. We could be watching for 492 on SPY. If we lose that, we could be dropping to 491.5. That's the breakout area. If we lose that, we're going to drop even lower. But I do believe we're going to see a small retracement. Small retracement is coming. But then the market could still get bought back up and push right back to the upside. There's a very good chance that's going to happen. But we have to watch this test first. So a big test is coming tomorrow. So I think SPY is going to retrace a little bit more to 492, if not 491.5. And we'll have to see if the buyers step in. They might step in and try to push it back up, depending on what Powell says and depending on the data. But I think there's a very good chance we'll retrace first and see some buyers try to defend our positions. I think the whole market's going to follow this trend. Tesla, in my opinion, it's approaching this yellow resistance. I can't guarantee we're going to even like meet this resistance, at least for now, because of Jerome Powell. So it might reject here, and we could even draw out like a very, very handy dandy Fibonacci retracement tool. We could start from like this wick right here and just come back up. And what you'll notice is that one of the most common retracements is the 0.618 retracement, which suggests that Tesla could be on its way back down. We might get a rejection here thanks to Powell and the market cooling off and fill one of these imbalances down here around this like 184 area. So we have an imbalance perfectly at 184. I could see Tesla retracing a little bit come Monday. Then we might see some buyers defend it very close to this imbalance and push back up as Tesla has been in this range. So notice how Tesla hits 190. This 190 range, sometimes it's 188, but usually it's 190. We get this rejection, and we tend to get bought up between 182 and 184. This is where the buyers step in. So I think there's a good chance that if Jerome Powell causes some down, so we could retrace a little bit on Tesla towards this imbalance here, then bounce back up and get a sideways day for Tesla. Nothing too crazy. That's what I'm anticipating for Tesla. For the triple Q, the same thing. It's the same thing in my opinion. I think that the QQQ is going to retrace towards this trend line very close to 427. And if we lose it, we could technically start testing this breakout zone. 427 is breakout to breakout, so we could come down to 425, then see some buyers defend it. But I think 427 is coming. We're going to test that area. If we lose it, 427 should come. So a little retracement is what I'm anticipating. And then we're going to be watching to see if the buyers defend us there. Is what Jerome Powell is about to say so significant to cause an even bigger drop, or is it going to be very minor? We'll just have to wait and see. I think we're going to retrace, though. I expect a retracement that's coming, and we'll see if buyers defend us at these key levels. So watch for a bounce either at 427 or 425, and we'll see what Powell says. So far, the last time Powell gave a speech, like I said earlier, the market came down but then got bought back up the next day. So we might see something similar. Nvda is trading sideways around this yellow trend line. This is a historical one. We might retrace towards 658 again. It might not be that bad. Could be a very minor retracement. Maybe even the breakout area towards 654. One of these levels is where I could see Nvidia retracing just a little bit and getting bought back. Bought back up and then trading sideways after that. So look for a little retracement on Nvidia, followed by some buyers to step in and defend our positions. That's all I'm seeing for the stock for now. For Apple stock, I'm seeing a little retracement that's very probable. So we have a possible inverse head and shoulders like structure that could be developing, but this does suggest we might retrace a little bit, all the way down to about 184. And there was something I saw at 184. I was just double checking this. Basically, on Aapl, we had a very important zone over there at 184. So 184 is where we happen to have this support at the 5 EMA. If we lose this, our breakout area is around like just under 183. So I could see a small retracement that 184, 183 area. But we'll see if buyers defend us here for the inverse head and shoulders like structure. You guys can see we have like a left shoulder here. This is very common. We have the head here. Are we about to retrace a little bit more towards 184, maybe a little lower, and then get bought back up and just trade sideways and push up? Or are we going to fail to do so? We'll just have to wait and see. But for now, in my opinion, Apple still has potential to hold support. So we'll be watching that very, very carefully. That's it for the main five I typically talk about. Now let's just talk about the rest of the different charts out there. So for Rivian, this has a nice setup so far. We're looking like we're nearing a bullish cross in the PPO, but Jerome Powell might cause this thing to retrace just a little bit. We could back test like 15.37 and then bounce and then try to push up higher. But this is starting to turn a little bit. Look for a little rejection, then a bounce. It's still holding up nicely. For SoFi, after the earnings have come out, it's showing some life. We grabbed liquidity down here. We're kind of consolidating right now. So I'm going to be looking for a back test of this liquidity zone down here at 7.68 and around 7.5. This zone might be retested. And then we might see some buyers step in and try to push it back up to 8. So a little drop in pop is all I'm seeing on SoFi. Nothing too crazy. For the Russell 2000, it's been stuck between the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame at 192.6, and then resistance is at 195.43 for now. I think it might retrace to 192.6. As long as we hold this, we're going to bounce back up to 195 for sideways price action. But if we lose 192, we're going to be retracing closer to 191.5 and eventually 190. So we'll have to see if we hold our 200 EMA. It's been holding so far. There's a good chance it's just going to stay in this range for now and then try to bounce. For what else is there? We have Microsoft. Microsoft is still holding up nicely. Nice uptrend right here. It looks like it wants to push higher. Going to be looking for this thing to back test. However, around 409 to 406, I think in this range might be retested. Then we might see a bounce and it might continue a little higher as the trend is still favoring the bulls. It looks like it wants to eventually push up to this higher level, but we might retrace first before we get up there. For AMD, just like Nvidia, it might come down towards 175.9. If we lose that, there's 173 coming. In that range, we could test those levels, then bounce and push back up into the 180s. So we'll be watching that carefully for a little retracement, then a bounce after that. For the VIX is starting to come down a bit. It's still very indecisive right now, but it's looking a little more bearish. Might test 13.65, but it's kind of flat for now. So it could trade sideways for now before it starts to sink a little bit. But the trend is still favoring the bulls for the market a little bit more. This is losing some momentum, but otherwise it's very, very sideways. For the dollar index, the dollar has been trying to break out. We'll see if this thing goes a little higher. It might get pushed up thanks to Powell, but things could change intraday. So just be careful, but see if it gets a rejection or not. Coinbase, very stationary. It's been going back and forth and back and forth. It has a potential inverse head and shoulder structure, so there could be a breakout coming, but we have to try to break and close above the 4-hour 200 EMA first. Hasn't done so yet. So I think it might consolidate for an extended period of time, trade sideways, and eventually try to push higher later on. So look for a rejection off the 50 EMA. It might retrace to 126, come back up, trade sideways for a little bit longer before it breaks out later on. That's all I'm seeing on Coinbase. For Google, this is looking a little bullish to me. We have a nice bullish divergence. It might try to pop. Let's see if Powell causes this thing to just retrace a little bit. But then we, excuse me, then we might get a nice breakout towards 145 to 146.8 very soon. So I think we're about to get a bullish cross in the PPO. It might try to push higher. Nice setup. I think Google is showing some life. Going to be looking for a small bounce on Google soon. Could we temporarily retrace because of Powell and then push up later? Yes, we can. I think that's most likely what's going to happen. For Amazon, we pumped very hard in little time. It could back test 168 and then try to bounce and just continue to hold up. I don't see it really tanking very hard. It might just retrace a little bit, but then I'm going to be looking for buyers to defend it at 168. So it might retrace a little bit and we'll see if buyers defend it. Meta is up 20%, holding up nicely. Going to be looking for a backtest of 464, just a little retracement, and then it might bounce after that and trade sideways in the very, very high 460s. So I think that Meta is still looking very strong. No sign of this thing breaking down, excuse me. We might retrace a little bit, backtest the 5 EMA in the mid 460s, and then trying to push back up higher. We're still holding up nicely, still showing some strength, good volume. We'll see how Meta does. But for now, I think the market might retrace a little bit, guys. There's a good chance, depending on what Jerome Powell says. And then we're going to be watching to see if buyers could defend us and buy up the market at some key levels. So watch your levels carefully, do what you have to do. And I'll see you guys very soon on the next one tomorrow morning. So see you guys tomorrow morning. Take care. Enjoy your Sunday. Get ready for Jerome Powell, who's going to be speaking on 60 Minutes during the evening today. It's going to be later on in the evening, so I'm not going to be around at that time. So we'll see how it goes. I'll be talking more about this tomorrow. Until then, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your weekend. Hopefully, the weather isn't too bad for many of you out there. Have a great time with family and friends. Just take care, relax, and get ready for tomorrow. Thank you guys. Have a great day if you guys have the day off. And I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you and peace out.